So just thinking about it, that's it started.
Good. So good morning, everybody, and welcome to this, our ScotlandIS Tech Tidbit. Delighted to have you with us today. We're joined by Ross McKelvie from Swordbreaker, and I'm fascinated to hear the topic for his talk, how to think like the bad guys. Wow, that sounds interesting. And I'm hopefully looking for a few tips here. So I'd like to welcome everybody. Today we're hoping to have an interactive discussion. So delighted to have cameras on. Please raise your hands if you've got any questions or pop them into the chat, and hopefully we can get a discussion going around this. Sorry, there we have the challenges of changing the format. So we change the format, and of course we'll have teething issues, but never mind, that's great. So in which case, without further ado, I would like to hand across to Ross and get a few tips on how to become a bad guy.
Great. Well, hopefully not become bad guys, but hopefully think enough like them to stop them hitting us. But great.
Thank you. The money's better as a bad guy, though.
The money is definitely better. I won't deny that. Crime does pay. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today. So you'll see up on your screens, I've got a few fictional villains for you to start thinking about. So what I want to talk to you about today is to start thinking differently about your cybersecurity. As David said, I'd love to make this as interactive as we can. So like stick your hand up, put stuff in chat, ask questions as we go, and we'll cover as much as we can. I've probably got more material than we've actually got time for. If there's any questions that end up being very specific to you or might be answered better later, I'm more than happy to hang on after the call and cover that. So a little bit about me. I'm Ross McKelvie. I'm founder and CEO of Swordbreaker. I've been working professionally in cybersecurity since 2006. I founded Swordbreaker at the end of 2023. Before that, I was consulting mainly for UK government, writing advice for them to be published out to other people. And before that, I used to work at the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, looking after the technical security of embassies and consulates, everything from kind of making sure that people had locked the door through to stopping Russian eavesdropping attacks. Really very, very interesting job. So it would be totally remiss of me not to talk to you, not to at least mention Swordbreaker and what we're doing. So we are a cybersecurity startup. We're a team of 3 based in Peebles in the Scottish Borders, and our first product, for which we have 2 patents pending, stops data theft and ransomware attacks, but without deep access to your systems or your data. So we currently have a small cohort of pilot customers, and we're looking to expand that out. So one of our pilot customers, the Scottish Government, and they're in fact supporting our development. So we're looking to bring some more customers on board. If joining our beta cohort would be of interest, I'd be very happy to talk to you afterwards. But there we are. That's enough self-promotion. Let me get on with the show. So when people think about cybersecurity, I find they often think about rules, checklists, things that they need to do. So I'm sure some of you on the call here will be familiar with Cyber Essentials, or maybe ISO 27001. You know, these are things that you might need to have maybe for a particular contract, or maybe you've got regulatory obligations that you need to meet, things like GDPR. Now, for me, these are related to security, but more like a cousin than a sibling. And these are typically kind of rules that are imposed upon you that you've got to comply with. And in my humble opinion, security is quite different. So security is about the risks that you have that are specific to you, and it's about you deciding what you need to do about them to make yourself safe. So critical to that is compliance is not security. So following those rules, I would see very much as compliance. Thinking about what is right for you and what you need to do to make yourself safe, that is security. And that is where I want to start our thinking today. So when the media in particular covers cybersecurity, it's often kind of approached in quite a quite a kind of nebulous way. I mean, compliance leads you to thinking about what tools and processes you need rather than thinking about the threats to you. And when you're trying to think about this nebulous threat, it's quite difficult to work out what it is that you need. But behind every attack is a real person somewhere, or people, and they've got a goal in mind and they're looking to achieve that goal. And that's what we want to think about today, and that's where I want to shape your thinking to improve your cybersecurity. So before we continue, I want to get a very bit of jargon, a horrible bit of jargon out of the way. So if you've talked to cybersecurity people, they might well have talked about a threat actor. I think it's a horrible piece of jargon. But for today, we will just consider a threat actor to be a baddie, because that's what they are. They are somebody who is looking to further their own goals to the detriment of viewers. So there were some potential baddies on my first slide. Would anybody did anybody recognise Lord Voldemort, perhaps? So would somebody like to maybe tell me what they think Lord Voldemort's motivations might be? So either just stick up your hand or go for a chat. If everybody's too shy, I can venture. David.
So I think it's about power for him, isn't it? Control.
For sure. Right. So yeah. So he's he wants kind of dominance for himself. There's maybe some ideology in there, in terms of he's all about kind of pure wizarding blood. But if we contrast that with, so Cruella de Vil was one of the other villains that I featured on that front page. So she's very much about wanting the coat. So it's about material gain for her. So what I want to do is kind of take that thinking about people's goals and apply that to some real potential baddies. So can anybody tell me who this guy is? So this guy, this is Xi Jinping, who is the president of China. Now, his interests are, I mean, are they bad? They're probably not aimed, they're probably not to the benefit of us, right? So thinking about what he's after doing, he is after furthering the interests of China, of which he is president, and that will involve a variety of things, but one of those things is technological advancement. So one of the things that China has been is particularly prolific at is economic espionage. So if I show you a couple of headlines. So this guy on the left, in fact, he is not one of our baddies. This is Ken McCallum. He's the Director General of the Security Service, MI5, who's actually looking to protect the UK and its industry. But you'll see that article is actually dated 2023. This is not a new threat from China. Now, if you're thinking about technological advancement, I mean, there's a lot about AI in the news at the moment, and people trying to get ahead on that. So you could put an awful lot of effort into inventing, testing new things, trying new things out. Some of that's going to work, some of it's not. Or you could have a cheeky look at what other people are doing and steal their work to give yourself a leg up. And there's a lot of stuff in the news about kind of political espionage. You might have seen the other week there was a case where there were two guys who'd been accused of sharing secrets with China, and the case was dropped. You'd kind of think maybe about James Bond style espionage, stealing secrets about new fighter jets, new missiles. I mean, these things happen, but they don't feel very relevant to you. Now, what you might be surprised at is that because China's kind of economic espionage is so prolific, you might be surprised that actually maybe you're working on something that's of interest to China. So let me introduce you to this guy. You'll have to forgive my pronunciation here. This is Xiao Qingjun. And this is a gentleman from New York. And in 2022, he was convicted of conspiracy to commit economic espionage, and in fact sentenced to 2 years in prison. But he wasn't stealing something that you might consider glamorous, right? He was stealing stuff from the US company General Electric, where he'd worked for a long time, and he, in fact, was an expert in turbine design. So you'll see the picture behind him is of turbines, and so he was, in fact, he was taking confidential documents. He was embedding them in images using a process called steganography, and then I think he was emailing to himself, which actually is probably not very cunning way of getting information out, because you can spot it. But turbines, they don't feel very James Bond, but nevertheless very, very valuable to China. And another example, so this is a case from 2017, actually settled in civil courts. This is Huawei, who are a Chinese company, and they actually ended up having to give some recompense to T-Mobile for stealing information about a robot called Tappy. And so Tappy's job is to test the touchscreens on mobile phones. Again, like, this is not fighter plane design. It's not the kind of thing that you might think that China would be interested in, but they are. So even though that kind of espionage threat might feel very foreign to you, it is actually quite possible that you were working on something that would be of interest to a foreign country to steal. So let's move on from China. Let's talk about this guy. Anybody want to shout out who this guy is? I think I see some recognition on people's faces. Okay, so this is Vladimir Putin, who's the president of Russia. So thinking about his motivations, so there's obviously the kind of, that political espionage, but there's economic espionage too. I mean, subject to sanctions. He's obviously fighting a war in Ukraine at the moment and looking to win that. And you're like, well, what does that have to do with me? What does that have to do with my business? So in 2020, there was an attack on a company called SolarWinds, and this was actually attributed to, or certainly blamed on, the Russians. And the reason I mention this is because this was an attack on a supplier. So it was what's called a supply chain attack, which is where a baddie goes after one of your suppliers and uses that to get access to your system. So SolarWinds was used in a whole range of places, but crucially including the US government and including the White House. And so it was considered that was the likely target. So what they did is, what the attackers did is they modified the software in an update that came down as part of the SolarWinds. So SolarWinds is like kind of administrative IT software, and then they used that to gain access to these systems. But so we think the US government was the attack, but it could have been anybody. And indeed, this is the kind of thing that a criminal group might try to do as well. And sometimes cyber attacks meet the real world. So let me introduce you to these guys. So the guy at the top here is called Dylan Earl. And he was convicted of, in fact, he pled guilty to aggravated arson. I think it was either this year or it might have been late last year. So Dylan actually used the Telegram messenger, and he volunteered his services to the Wagner Group, who you might have heard of in relation to the Ukraine war, because they're a mercenary group with close links to the Russian state. And having volunteered his services there, he was directed to burn down a warehouse. And the reason he was directed to burn down a warehouse was because it contained communications equipment, which was destined for Ukraine. So here is a owner of a warehouse, and indeed the neighboring owners of the warehouses being affected by global geopolitics, with Russia performing an attack on indirectly on UK soil. So the three gentlemen at the bottom there, they were also convicted of the attack. So these guys were basically hired thugs. So they didn't know that they were working for Russia. So Dylan very clearly volunteered his services. The guys at the bottom, they were just kind of criminals who were thugs for hire. So Joachim Rose, Nii Mensa, and Eugenius Asmina, who I believe was the getaway driver. And so, yeah, so they burned down this warehouse in Leighton, as part of London, with the communications equipment. So, cyber turning real world. So let's talk about these people. Now, I'm not sure that I'd expect you to recognize the lady on the left. Her name is Christina Chapman, and she is a lady, I think she was 50, I think, from Arizona. Gentleman on the right would seem to be kind of not very connected to her. So this, of course, is Kim Jong-un, who's the leader of North Korea. So again, like what does the leader of North Korea kind of have to do with you and your business? Well, so I think it was earlier this year. Forgot to put my time on. So Christina Chapman was convicted of running a laptop farm on behalf of North Korea. So the way that this worked was that North Korean workers were getting remote IT jobs in US companies, but and these companies were posting out laptops for these people to use. And so Christina's job was to receive these laptops, plug them into a network, and then basically let the North Koreans control them remotely. But why? Like, why are they doing this? And again, it's back to the motivation. So Kim Jong-un, North Korea is subject to massive economic sanctions. It's a country that needs money. It struggles to get it. One of the ways it can get it is just to earn it. And so this is what they're doing. So they're just earning money with like normal people doing normal IT jobs, but fraudulently, because they're claiming to be in the US, where IT workers are paid a great deal of money. But my feeling is, like, if this were, I think these IT workers were working for more than like 300 US companies, and this is one laptop farm. I would be highly surprised if Christina Chapman was the sole laptop farm in North Korea for the US. There was somebody made actually interviewed 2 North Korean candidates for a job recently. So yeah, it could happen to you if you're recruiting remotely. So slightly different motivation. Let's talk about this guy. So this guy is Dmitry Koroshev, and he is head of the Lockbit, or was head of the Lockbit ransomware gang. I'd probably say is, actually, because these gangs disappear and then reappear. So he was offering ransomware as a service. So if you're not, ransomware has actually had quite a lot of coverage in the media over the summer. And the way the attacks work is criminals, they'll get into your system, they'll kind of spread through your systems, they'll steal your data, they will then encrypt all of the data that you've got on your systems to put you out of action, and they'll basically extort money from you. So they'll demand money to put your systems back to working order, and they'll also demand money. They'll blackmail you, basically threatening to leak your information online. But ransomware is not. This isn't just like some guy, right? This is a business, and it's not even just a business, it's an industry. There's a whole industry behind this. So Lockbit, in fact, were offering ransomware as a service, and so they're selling their services to other criminals who actually conduct the ransomware attacks, and their motivation is money, right? So they don't really care who they're targeting. They just want it to be easy, and they want to make money as fast as possible. And it's kind of crazy because these guys, they're a business. This is their marketing. So they had a marketing kind of campaign where they announced on social media that they were going to offer $1,000 to people who tattooed the Lockbit ransomware group logo on their body. And in fact, it was there was so much demand that they actually had to kind of stop paying out for this. So here are some pictures of people who've had tattoos of the Lockbit logo. So for the sake of $1,000, you're carrying a ransomware group's symbol around with you for life. It's not all bad news. These guys actually got taken down in February 2024. By a group of law enforcement agencies, but sadly he's based in Russia. Russia they're not going to extradite. So Dmitry has gone to ground. Will he ever be convicted? No, I suspect not. Will he reappear? Yes, he probably will. So let me talk about another guy. So this guy is Maxim Yubabets, and he is in fact the head of Evil Core. So the reason I mention him is that he's head of this group. I mean, I think they stole kind of $300 million, that kind of order over a course of about 10 years. Ended up on the FBI most wanted list, and his motivation, if you look at this, is his car. So again, his motivation very clearly financial gain. But the reason I mention him is because he slightly blurs the lines between cybercrime and nation state, because he most definitely had protection from the Russian government, and indeed his hacker group is attributed various more state-directed attacks, should we say, have been attributed to his group. So there's obviously these groups of cyber criminals. They're financially motivated. They are out to get you, but they're not out to get you, right? They're out to get somebody, and they don't care who that is. So it's a bit like, it's a bit like parking your car next to the nice Mercedes. If somebody else's car is easier to get, they're gonna take that one, and that's very much the case with ransomware groups and cybercrime. So let me talk to you also about this guy. We're just about to run out of time, actually. This is Joe Tidy. So Joe Tidy is not a bad guy. I will emphasize he is in fact a BBC journalist. The reason I mention him, so he's actually got a great podcast out about Evil Core, so you can learn all about Maxime. The reason I mention him is that whilst investigating a ransomware attack, he was actually somebody attempted to recruit him. So a ransomware gang attempted to recruit him. All he needed to do was install some software, and they basically pay him a huge cut of the ransom, and indeed such that he would never need to work again. So this is thinking about that internal threat, that insider threat to your organization. Do you have a disgruntled employee? Are you dealing with ex-employees? There was a ex-worker, in fact, in the British Museum in January of this year, and he was disgruntled. And what did he do? Well, he just kind of came in after he'd been dismissed and then just shut down the systems, and that ended up shutting down the museum. So again, not very James Bond, but a very real impact on the British Museum. So as I run out of time, let me leave you with a obligatory Sun Tzu quote. So I genuinely believe that if you can think properly about the threats, then you are better placed to protect yourself. Everybody's been very quiet. I appreciate we're about to run out of time, but if anybody does have any questions, please do shout. Fiona, I can certainly see you.
Hello. I was just wondering, you said there it's like when you park your car in the car park and you park next to the nicer car, or the sort of car. How do you make your organization less appealing, I guess, to cyber criminals in whatever form they are, whether it's a monetary sort of behavior, or whether it's they need this bit of tech or whatever that you're creating? How do you make yourself less attractive?
Being less appealing, that's an interesting one, right? So I think to a large extent, these cybercrime attacks are not targeted. I mean, there's a whole industry. There's a group of people whose the way they make money is they get access to organizations and will then seek to sell that on to somebody who exploits it. So at that point, it's very much kind of spray and pray. They're not targeting you, they're just targeting everybody, and if they can get a foothold, then they will. I mean, it would be wrong of me to suggest that all cybercrime is the same, or that people's motivations are the same. You'll have seen, like with the some of the, the attack on Marks and Spencer, for example, over the summer. That was attributed to 2 Brits actually who were using social engineering, which is a fancy word for kind of conning people on the phone. And so it's not that they were just going after Marks and Spencer, but their target list was probably kind of smaller, right? They're going after people who who they're confident they're going to get a good payout from. And indeed, I mean, you can see that Marks and Spencer, the motivation to pay out would have been higher. I think they were quoted as losing £45 million a week through the ransomware attack. Not particularly because of the recovery cost to their IT, but because their stuff was offline, so they were losing revenue. Anybody else? Thank you very much, Kate.
So I think if we don't have any other questions, it just remains for me to say, Ross, thank you very much for your presentation today and your chat. I think it was really interesting to see the variety of profiles of individuals who may have a vested interest in our organisations, and that variety of interests all kind of manifest as a risk to the business. So almost irrespective of what their motivation is, it's the same for us from a protective perspective. So if we just prepare that, the protection for all types of attacks, and make ourselves as addressing some of those kind of low-hanging opportunities to improve our security provision. You spoke about the cyber essentials, and just addressing some of those fundamental basic things perhaps gets us on that journey where we make ourselves less accessible to some of those attacks that take place. But really interesting. Thank you very much for your time this morning, and thank you everybody for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again on the ScotlandIS Tech Tidbits. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.